welcome back to another episode of the Carter Cast. I'm your host, Carter Bond. Back with me again, as always, is Connor Sparrow. Connor, let's get right into it. We're on a time crunch. The laptop might die. I don't know. We're getting ghetto here on the Carter Cast, so laptop might die. Don't have a charger with me. I'm on the road right now. Let's talk about Game 7. Unbelievable. I mean, the fact that we even had a Game 7. We talked about it before. We recorded after Game 5, I believe, correct? It was 3-2. Boston had just won in Boston, and I thought the Celtics were going to come back. Even after that game, I said Celtics are going to come back. They're going to win this series, no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
No, a little bit of doubt. I'm not going to say no doubt in my mind, but we kept saying last podcast, we said if the Celtics, they're going to win Game 7 at home. There's almost no way that the Celtics don't win Game 7 if they win Game 6. They miraculously win Game 6, one of the great playoff games we'll ever watch. I mean, when Derek White, you saw Marcus Smart take that shot, so on brand that he takes the last shot in that game, and then all of a sudden Derek White gets it. I mean, I don't know about you, but going nuts. No rooting interest in this game. I really don't care. Even like my take loses, whatever. But then it rolls into Game 7. Game 7, you're sitting there thinking, holy smokes, man, like 3-3, Boston's an 7.5, 8-point favorite. There's no way they don't lose in Boston. And the Miami Heat somehow do it again, win by 20. Nothing makes sense in this playoffs is what I did the long form of getting to say.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on, Carter. I was on the podcast. I said, I think the Heat can pull it off in 6, but if it goes 7 in Boston, I like the Celtics to win at home. I thought it'd be a lot like that Philadelphia Game 7 where Boston kind of, the crowd was into it and they pulled away. Let's just talk about the elephant in the room, though. Jason Tatum did roll his ankle in the first play of the game, and that did play into it. I'm not saying Boston would have won that game if he didn't roll his ankle, but he clearly wasn't right the rest of the game. He could barely run on it. He couldn't get any lift on it. He only shot 1 for 4 from 3, I think. It affected it. It did. And Jaylen Brown couldn't hold on to the ball. 8 turnovers. I mean, I don't know, Carter. This Heat team was more disciplined. They were hitting shots. Caleb Martin was hitting every big shot for them, and they were just poised. Is that at the end of the day, they were poised. They played good defense. They made Boston take tough shots, make decisions, make the wrong decisions a lot of times. And every time Boston would make a little mini run and get it to within 7, 8 points, they would respond. They'd score 3, 4, 5 times in a row. They didn't let up. They were the better team. They were the more mature team. And if you're Boston, you got a lot of decisions to make this offseason. A lot of decisions.
Yeah. At 9:10 Eastern Time, May 30th. 2 days until Game 1 of the NBA Finals. But going back to the Game 7 of it, I know keep talking about it all playoffs. It's been the story of all playoffs, the Caleb Martin part. And I know us Hornets fans and us ACC fans, it doesn't make sense. It still does not make sense. We watch these games, and he just keeps making shots. And you always expect just like whenever you're a Hornets fan, anytime they had the ball in their hands, you're like, oh, what are they going to do now?
Yep.
They could either, it was a 50% chance. They could either go and have a top 10 dunk of the season, poster someone, destroy them, or they're going to dribble off their foot and hit their face, and it goes out of bounds.
I mean, us Hornets fans, man. Cody Zeller and Caleb Martin both heading back to the finals. What's going on here?
Back.
Sorry, not back. Heading to the finals for the first time. I don't know, Carter. I think it really boils down to confidence. And even when Caleb Martin was in Charlotte, he didn't lack confidence. And you can go back to the early days of our podcast, the early days of the Carter Cast before we had any graphics or anything. And you can probably find some clips of me saying, please, dear God, cut Caleb Martin at least. Like cut
or the Martin twins.
Cut both of them. Cut both of them if possible, but at least one of them. And I was always vouching for Caleb to get cut. I was dead wrong. And maybe I don't think he would have thrived like this in Charlotte. I think it's really just a Miami Heat thing. Jimmy Butler's got them playing at a different level right now. And just confidence is what it is. He's playing with a chip on his shoulder. I never would have expected this. And people are going to rag on the Hornets for cutting him, blah, blah. At the time, I think it was the right move. With the roster they had, and he wasn't doing anything like on the court. He wasn't playing any rotational minutes. He played a lot of time with the Greensboro Swarm. I don't think it was the wrong decision. I'm not mad at him. I think this is a credit to the Greensboro Swarm development system. Just saying.
Hey, we're big Swarm fans. Maybe bigger Greensboro Swarm fans than Hornets fans.
Yeah,
we
maybe.
love big-time Swarm podcast. One day, Connor, both of us will go do a live show at the Greensboro Swarm. We'll broadcast a game. Maybe we can get broadcasting rights here one day.
Oh, that'd be amazing. We might get more viewers, yeah. I want to touch on this, Carter.
Wait. Before you get into that, Caleb Martin.
Okay, all right.
We have to. This can't keep going on. It is so stupid that people believe he should have been the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. That's ridiculous. Jimmy Butler led in every stat, and he led this team. Without Jimmy Butler, they don't win those games. Obviously, you can say without Caleb Martin, they don't win those games either, but Jimmy Butler was the best player. He was the MVP. The fact that it was 5-4 in the voting, come on. Jimmy Butler was the best player. Quit playing into the media narrative.
I'm going to fight back a little on this. I do think Jimmy Butler should have won it. But I don't have an issue with it being a close vote. If you watch the games, there was long stretches where Jimmy Butler would disappear. Now, yes, in the first couple of games, like he took over for sure. But in these games that Boston won, he would disappear for these long stretches, and Caleb Martin hit every big shot. Even in Game 7, momentum-shifting shots. Now, yes, those were off Jimmy Butler penetration. It was off his pass. It was off his rebound, push the ball at the floor. Sure. But if you just look at the numbers and hitting big shots, Caleb Martin, I mean, there was a case to be made. It's almost like the finals back when Golden State won the first time and
That's
Andre
what I was going to
Iguodala
bring
won
up.
it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up.
When Iguodala won over Steph Curry, and everybody was like, "Oh, Curry had a pretty bad down series for his level."
But I think
and Iguodala's defense.
I think it's the opposite. I think Curry should have won that, no doubt.
I think so too.
I think the Iguodala part of it is kind of a stain in NBA history, but that's another podcast. But I wanted to bring that up. Jimmy Butler was the best player by far.
He was. Okay, he was the best player, and I am glad that he won it. I think there was a little bit of media hype thrown at Caleb Martin just because of the story, and I'm not taking anything away from Caleb Martin. Undrafted, crazy story. But I would have given it to Jimmy Butler. I'm not upset that there were a few votes for Caleb Martin. I'm not upset.
The other thing, too, is what I found ironic is if you were listening to the broadcast the last, 3 games, Reggie Miller was just, creaming his pants to the fact that he was like, oh, Caleb Martin is the best player in this series. And then you see the votes. Reggie Miller voted for Jimmy Butler. So,
it was so funny. It was so funny.
But what were you going to bring up before we talking about Caleb Martin?
Well, nice little segue here with Caleb Martin, actually. If you're Boston, what do you do about Jaylen Brown? Because in this series, I've heard people talk about it, and if you watched all 7 games, Caleb Martin and Jimmy Butler, as a tandem on the wing, were better than Tatum and Brown for the majority of this series. And that's honestly what it boils down to. So if you're in Boston and Jaylen Brown is eligible to get 50-plus mil, and then 60-plus mil the last couple of years of that Supermax deal, do you pay him that? I don't think you do. He had 8 turnovers in a Game 7. He can't dribble the ball. He shot 16% from 3, which in the first 2 rounds he was above 50 and above 40 against Philly and Atlanta. But 16% from 3, 8 turnovers in a Game 7. I don't know if you can give that guy $50 million.
Yeah, let me read the contract too. I sent it to you earlier. If Boston does bring him back, year 1, $50 million, year 2, $54 million, year 3, $58 million, year 4, $62 million, year 5, $66 million. And the cap is around, $135 million. So
that sounds right.
Almost half your roster's pay is going towards Jaylen Brown. That's not worth it. But the thing is, you sign him. You have to do it. And I think it's a catch-22 here because if I'm Boston, if I don't know how all the cap stuff works. I don't know what their cap situation is this summer with all the Malcolm Brown people and all that. I don't understand. I haven't looked into that yet. But if you can, I say you run it back one more time with a different coach. I really think that is the difference.
And I think that's what they're...
And also, you're not going to get more in return for Jaylen Brown.
I think that's what they're going to do. I think it's a very valid argument is that, yes, you can. It's easy for you to say, okay, don't sign Jaylen Brown with this deal. But who are you going to get to replace him? Yes, it'll be cheaper, but is it going to be that caliber of play?
The best trade I saw was Anthony Simons and the 3rd overall pick.
Yeah, and now something like that, if you're Boston, I would explore it. I don't think Jaylen Brown's untouchable by any means.
No, not untouchable at all. What if I was Boston? I say you sign him, do 1 more year, run it back, get a new coach, see how it goes, and if it doesn't work out next year, there's always going to be a team in the market for him that's willing to trade for him. There's all these teams, the Rockets, the Spurs, the whatever bottom of the barrel team you can think of that thinks they can take that next step with a guy like Jaylen Brown. They'll be available next year saying, hey, let's get him. I'll trade for him. You may not get as much if he has a bad season or can't perform in the playoffs or have 8 turnovers in a Game 7 NBA Eastern Conference Finals game. but I think it's worth the risk.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth the risk too, but I have a point I want to make. Get the TikTok camera on. If you're the Boston Celtics right now and you have the opportunity to sign Jaylen Brown to the Supermax deal, I think they're going to do it. And I think that's the right decision because the replacement they're going to get is going to be what? Probably a downgrade. Yes, it may be cheaper, but it won't be the same level of production. But here's what I want to say. The Boston Celtics are not going to win an NBA championship with Jaylen Brown as their second best player. And you have to be sure about this guy to sign him to the Supermax. And yes, they're going to do it. I can't see them making a championship run with him as their second best player, Carter. I just can't do it. Not when all this cap space is tied up. It's going to be over $110 million between Tatum and Brown or something ridiculous like that. You've got to be sure that those two can lead you to a title. And I'm not sure they can. I think this year might have been their best bet. I really do.
I think it may have been their best bet, but why not next year? Why wouldn't next year be their best bet? If they return everybody and get a better coach, why would next year be fine? And the thing is, we always think every offseason we're like, oh, this team needs to do this, they need to do that, they need to do this. 85 to 90% of teams are going to come back with relatively the same roster, adding a few draft picks and a couple average free agents. That's how most of the league's going to be. And I think Boston, it's not a bad thing to run it back. Everyone has a bad taste in their mouth right now, and rightfully so. You can't lose by 20 at home against the Celtics. But if you're a Celtics fan, the way you rationalize it is, hey, Joe Mazzulla was arguably one of the worst coaches in the league, and Jason Tatum got hurt on the first play.
That's true, but then why are you down 3-0 against the Miami Heat, who are, yes, an 8 seed, but...
And you go back to the Mazzulla part, and if you what was it, the third quarter of Game 3? That was awful. I mean, that was pitiful.
They rolled over, but I don't know, Carter. With the cap situation, who are they going to surround them with? Al Horford's only getting older. Marcus Smart, is he really going to be the tertiary option with them? Derek White emerged as well late in the year. But when is the point? When is the tipping point? When is the point where they're like, okay, for whatever reason, yes, we're competing. Yes, we're in the Eastern Conference Finals or semifinals every year. Yes, we made it to the finals a couple times. When is the tipping point that you say, okay, this just won't work to win us a championship? We have to maybe not blow it up, but change some things, change some core pieces. What's the tipping point?
I think it's next year. I really do think, because you have the whole Ime stuff before the season. I think that just gets slid under the rug a little too much. Like, that's a big deal, losing your coach that took you to the NBA Finals, and you have a weird controversy around it. You bring in the guy who's like, the fourth assistant, because you lose Will Hardy, you lose some other guy, Damon Sotomayor, who's now at Georgia Tech. You lose these guys. That matters.
No, I agree. And coming into the year, nobody even knew who Joe Mazzulla was. Honestly, no. I mean, a lot of people were saying second row Joe.
Unless you're like a college basketball savant and you're like, oh, he was awesome on that 2010 West Virginia team with Deshaun Butler.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm sure it was a tough adjustment for the players. A coach that just took them to the finals all of a sudden gone. And credit to them, they pulled it together. They were one of the most talented rosters in the league. But I think you're right about next year being the tipping point, because eventually you have to look in the mirror and say this constructed roster, as it's constructed right now, is not going to win us a championship. Yes, we can get to the Eastern Conference semis or the Eastern Conference Finals every year, but that's not the goal of the NBA, Carter. And so I think eventually the frustration is going to boil over and something's going to happen, whether it be somebody requesting out, Marcus Smart or Jaylen Brown, or them pulling the trigger and being like, all right, it's time to get some new pieces in here. I'm really curious to see what happens. And I know Joe Mazzulla is going to get the blame and be the scapegoat. And I'm not saying he shouldn't, but I don't know if that's just like a fix-all.
I think he should, because I think he made some very questionable coaching decisions. And the other part of it is, could you imagine being the team having Jaylen Brown on that fifth year for $66 million?
That's going to be rough. He's got to make some significant improvements. He's got to get a handle, and his defense has regressed since the first few years in the league, honestly.
That handle ain't coming.
I don't think it is either. Like, I saw a comparison. It's almost like a hockey player is like struggling with learning how to skate. Like dribbling is like, to be an elite basketball player, that's just something you take for granted, that all these guys have a pretty nice handle, and he doesn't.
And he has a solid jump shot, but it's not like an elite jump shot. Guys like Klay Thompson and Michael Porter Jr. have elite jump shots, and they can get away with it. They're also in phenomenal systems. That's the other part with the Celtics we need to get to, is that Charles Barkley nailed it. It was just giving you a headache watching it. It's take your turn basketball. Like we always talk about. Why do I love the Warriors? Why do I love the Nuggets? Because they pass the ball, they move, they cut, off-ball stuff. Watch the Celtics when someone else has the ball. Every single person. It's like going to a pickup game at your local YMCA. It's, all right, I'm going to dance around until there's 4 seconds left. I'm going to take a step back, or I'm going to drive in the lane last second and then maybe get lucky with an outlet alley-oop to like Al Horford or Robert Williams. It's horrible basketball. And that's and that's the part where I don't know if that ever changes.
I don't think it does either, not with the way the roster is constructed, not with the
Even
personalities.
coaching. I don't think coaching matters.
I don't know if it does either. And just watching, just specifically Game 7 last night, just watching, they did not try anything different. Derek White was actually getting it going, getting some penetration, and they started going to that a little bit more, which was working. But I never saw a Tatum post up. I never saw a Tatum ISO at the elbow and pull it for a mid range like he did the first few years. And I'll credit Bill Simmons with this because I was actually thinking this myself. Why did they shy away from Tatum in the mid range game? Why are they shying away from that? I think they're very analytics driven. I heard him say that. They're very analytics driven, whereas like take a three or drive to the rim and get fouled. These mid ranges aren't going to work. But if that's the best part of your best player's game, you can't just strip that away from him for analytics. I don't think so.
And also, analytics have to go out the window to some degree when it's playoff time.
100% agree.
Analytics can work in the regular season, no doubt about that. But when it comes playoff time and there's 2 minutes left and you need a bucket, who gives an F if it's a three or a layup? You want the best shot possible. Take the mid-range shot. Jason Tatum can continuously make that mid-range shot. He has a great fadeaway step back. Whatever. He can make any of those mid-range shots, and all you see was just dance around, step back, three. I mean, it sounds like an old white guy yelling at the lawn, this isn't basketball. 80s basketball was basketball. John Stockton, all that. Like, no, but to some point, it isn't basketball. It's not good basketball, obviously.
Well, when the Celtics are hitting threes, everything's great. Everything's fine. It's gravy. It's paradise when they're hitting 20, 25 threes a game. Tatum shot 23% from three this round against Miami. Previous 2 years, I saw this stat. Previous 2 years, he was just under 40% from three. That's a huge regression. Now, credit the Heat's defense. We can get into that more when we preview the finals. Something's got to give, though. You got to switch something up when things aren't working. Horford finished the year second in three-point percentage. He was 28% against Miami. The shots just weren't falling, and the defense was there, honestly, but you have to do something different.
The fact that you said 28% was surprising. I don't recall one point other than 1-3 last night where Al Horford made a shot. It felt like every single time he touched the ball, he missed.
Well, yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying is that they're not memorable shots either. They're not run stoppers. Like every time him or Marcus Smart or Jaylen Brown would get the ball in the corner for like a momentum shifting three, it would miss. It would miss.
And the other thing is, are they good threes? They weren't. None of them were good threes. The Heat are contesting threes, and that's where you got to give the Heat credit. Is everybody was locked in defensively and getting up there, causing trouble at the 3-point line, and that's where you beat the Celtics. Is if you can guard the three, you got them. And like you said before the series started, and like you said last episode, the Heat can punk them, and they did.
They did. And if you're the Celtics, I know you want to push the pace. I know you want to get more shots up, more threes up. But is an Al Horford pick and pop three with a guy closing out in his face with 15 on the shot clock, is that a great shot? I don't think so. You haven't reversed the ball at all. There's only been two guys touch the ball, pick and pop, and there's a guy closing out in Al Horford's face. Can he make the shot? Yes. He's a respectable three-point shooter. He's an NBA player. He can make the shot. He's proven he can. I don't think that's a great shot in the playoffs. And they only scored 84 points. Carter, and I don't think they never tried to switch it up, which was just shocking to me. I guess credit the Heat's defense and Tatum's ankle, but man, they rolled over.
Yeah, they did. They 100% did. Let's talk about the Miami part of it.
All right.
Anything else on Boston? I think we kind of did it.
No, I think that's about it. I'm just going to be curious to see whenever things start leaking out about, this team would pay Jaylen Brown this much money, or this team wants Jaylen Brown, or Joe Mazzulla is probably out. I'm just curious to see how fast those things start leaking out and what they actually do in the offseason.
Yeah, exactly. Same here. Let's move on to the Heat part of it all. Obviously, we talked about the Caleb Martin piece and how awesome he was. Jimmy Butler, we've mentioned it countless times throughout this playoff run, just bringing that insane intensity to every single game. Everybody's buying in. But I don't have words. It sounds cliche. It sounds lame. It sounds, like a rom-com thing. But I'm genuinely speechless at this run. I don't think people are appreciating how insanely ridiculous this is.
Anybody who says they saw this coming is lying. The Heat were dead in the water. The negative point differential, they were barely made it out of the play-in tournament. Anybody who says they saw this coming is not telling the truth. And I'm so annoyed. I've been seeing a lot of media narratives lately that are like, we should have seen this coming. Jimmy Butler, they were the one seed last year. Absolutely not. This year,
they lost to the Hawks.
This year is completely separate from last year. Yes, they brought back a lot of the pieces, but we had an 82-game sample size for them, and even the play-in tournament as well, that shouldn't have inspired any type of confidence. This run is unparalleled, and nobody saw this coming. And I don't think people are putting it in perspective how insane this actually is. Because yes, Bam Adebayo, okay, he's their second option. He's a great player.
He hasn't even played that well.
He hasn't played that well, and he's not a focal point of the offense. He's just not. You can't rely on him to get 20 a game. Yes, he'll have those 25 and 13 games, but there's a lot of games he'll have 10, 12 points and miss a lot of shots around the rim, and that's your second best player. And they've been relying on Caleb Martin to be their second offensive creation option, an undrafted guy. And he's been stepping up to the plate, but I don't think we've ever seen this before, Carter. At least since I've been watching the NBA, this is the most impressive finals run I've seen, by far.
Everyone on Twitter was doing the 2018 LeBron Cavs run. I don't think it's remotely close, but is this Miami Heat team the greatest finals run in NBA history?
I think it is, just because you look at Jimmy Butler, nobody had him as a top 10 player coming into the year, or especially going into the playoffs, and now I think that's going to be reevaluated, and rightly so. Nobody had him as a top 10 guy going into the playoffs. Bam Adebayo, he's not a top 25, 30 guy. He's their second best player. And if you look at their supporting cast, Tyler Hero, who was Sixth Man of the Year, a couple years ago, he's out with an injury. And they have all these undrafted guys as their supporting cast. I think this is the greatest run to the finals I've seen a team make, just by how improbable it is. And you can bring up the 2018 Cavs, and that is an amazing feat as well. But they did have LeBron, who everybody knew was the best player in the league. And yes, his supporting cast was very mediocre. But this Heat team supporting cast is on par with that, and they don't have LeBron.
I also think it's just kind of you mentioned it's kind of on par. Like, they're very equal. Like, if you don't remember this Heat roster or this Cavs roster, got it pulled up for you. Hold up 1 second. Here we go. So we have LeBron. We have Kevin Love. Kevin Love might as well be Bam Adebayo, right?
Yeah.
Not the focal point of the offense. Does the dirty work. Get a bunch of boards.
But even he was hurt.
Yeah. J.R. Smith. That's very Caleb Martin-y.
Yeah, right. You can go. Yeah.
George Hill. Gabe Vincent. Rodney Hood. Duncan Robinson, maybe?
Yeah.
Tristan Thompson. I don't know who you'd go there because they don't really have a backup.
Yeah. No, I think you're making your point, though. This supporting cast for the Heat is very on par.
Jeff Green?
Haywood Highsmith.
Was Dwayne Wade on that roster?
That was the year they blew it up early in the year. And
okay. That's what I thought. That was the whole...
When they had D. Rose and Dwayne Wade and Isaiah Thomas, and they blew it up halfway through. Yeah. And they had like Jay Crowder, I think. That Cavs roster, that supporting cast, is very on par with this Heat supporting cast. And nobody's going to say that Jimmy Butler is better than LeBron. So that's why I feel like this run is more impressive, because Jimmy's not a top 10 player or wasn't regarded as one going into this run. And the supporting cast is a lot weaker. It just is.
You want to know why this is more impressive? Who did the Heat play? They played the Bucks with Giannis. Yes, Giannis missed 2 games in that series. I don't care. Giannis Antetokounmpo is arguably the best player in basketball besides Nikola Jokic. I mean, you could even make an argument Giannis is better. I'm not going to dispute that right now. But look who the Heat played. The Heat played the Bucks. They had to go against Giannis. They won, in 5 games? I don't even remember at this point.
Yeah.
5 games. They were an 8 seed. They had to win the play-in, beat the Bucks, and then the next round they had to beat the Knicks. A little bit easier, but like, you play who's in front of you. Knicks, Cavs, it's a 4-5. Those were true 4-5s in the Eastern Conference, and they still beat them. This one, they go against the Boston Celtics, the betting favorite. The sports books could not get enough of the Boston Celtics. Every odds. You mentioned last show, take Jokic MVP right now. You're not going to get better odds. You're not. And even though that was a little scary right there, because Jokic might have been plus odds if the Celtics won that game.
Oh, he would have been.
It went down to minus 120, and now it's all the way back up to minus 320, just because the Celtics are not in there. That shows how good this Celtics team truly was. Every analytics thing loves them, and those are all. Even the Knicks series, the Knicks were favored against the Heat. And then let's look at these Cavs series. You ready? The Cavs played the Pacers. Who was the best pacer in that series? Oladipo?
Yeah.
Lance Stevenson? They had to go to 7 games in that one. The Cavs versus the Raptors. do we really need to do another Raptors rant of how bad that team was?
They couldn't get it done in the playoffs. LeBron owned them.
The Tennessee Titans of the NBA, the Toronto Raptors. Even though the Raptors did win a ring, so I can't really say that. And then they played the Celtics. They went to 7 games with that Celtics team. Tatum as a rookie, like they were so young, and
with no Kyrie,
no Kyrie, no Gordon Hayward, and they still took him to 7 games. That was one of the easiest finals runs if you look at it. But that Cavs team, it's still a remarkable run. Going back, I know it's long form. Going back to the original question, it's not even close. This Heat team, it's not getting. This sounds like Mark Jackson, but it's not getting the respect it deserves.
It's not, and I think you bring up a great point when you talk about their path, because if you look at the Cavs' path, those teams are not as good as the teams the Heat had to play this time. And if
arguably, that Knicks team is better than all 3 of those teams.
I would argue that as well. I would argue that as well. So I'm going to agree with your point there based on the Heat's path, because if you look at those Cavs teams that they had to play, I would argue the Heat's path this year, and you said it before, even the Knicks would probably be better than any of those teams the Cavs played in 2018 on that run. And we've harped on this point before on the podcast. The talent level in this league has exponentially grown from 10 years ago. So if you're looking at teams from 2015, 14, like the 7, 8 seeds during that time, there's so many better teams this year in the league that Heat had to go through. And so that's why I think this Heat team, this run they're making is 100% better than the 2018 Cavs run. I think they're both very impressive, but they still had LeBron, and they still had people picking them to go to the finals, and they had a weaker conference they had to go through. This Heat team has knocked off a couple of juggernauts on their way, and nobody had pegged them to do this before the year. And anybody that's like, we should have seen this coming, Jimmy Butler after last year, blah, blah. No, we had an 82-game sample size to see this team, and nobody was bought in on them. They barely made it out of the play-in tournament.
And you mentioned they had LeBron. That's the whole thing here, is people are misconstruing the argument here is that, LeBron's final, nobody is saying that LeBron's run was worse than Jimmy Butler's run this year. That no one's saying that. It's the team part of it.
Right.
The Cavs had LeBron. I guarantee you, if you go back and look at the sportsbooks odds, guarantee you the Cavs are probably the favorite still coming out.
Yeah, I bet so too. I don't know. His supporting cast was weak, but as far as talent goes, top to bottom, the Heat are a worse team talent-wise, and they've played harder teams.
They've been unbelievable. Should we talk about the finals now?
I think we should.
Heat Nuggets. Imagine that. Imagine that finals. I texted a couple people. First response, I said, what are your thoughts on Nuggets Heat finals? First response I got, NBA TV. Couldn't said it better myself. But the thing is, it's not NBA TV. The basketball part of it, for people who do love basketball, this was the best outcome out of the Final Four, I think, from a basketball perspective. Yeah, ratings-wise, maybe not as great, but the storylines of it all are just as compelling as Lakers-Celtics, in my opinion. I mean, this Heat run is crazy.
I do agree about the Heat run. I don't know if it's the best outcome. I think the Nuggets might stomp the Heat, and the Celtics could have been a little more competitive.
That's
maybe
fair. That's fair, but I think just watching game to game and how it's played, I still think from a basketball side, it's going to be more fun to watch, like more pure basketball. Because, yes, it might have been closer games with the Celtics, but I still think the same result happens. I still think the Nuggets would have wiped anybody who was playing.
As a true basketball fan, I like to consider myself one. I'm just very excited to see what Spoelstra does against Jokic. I'm so excited to see because...
Is Udonis Haslem going to play?
They brought out that zone against the Celtics, and they didn't know what to do. Boston did not know what to do. Miami zone bothered them, contested threes, weird decisions off the dribble. They made guys pick up their dribble, and every time Jaylen Brown even put the ball in the court, they were just diving in and reaching for it, which is the smart thing to do. I will say, I don't know if that zone's going to work as well against Denver. I like Jokic against the zone. I think he always sees 2 passes ahead of everybody else. Whereas if you're the Celtics, you can swing, and get the ball at the corner, but the defense has time to rotate. It was the right play, but the defense a lot of the time could rotate. Jokic can make that skip pass to the corner. He can make that pass 2 moves ahead of everybody else. He can hit the cutter in open space a lot quicker and a lot better decision-making than anybody on Boston could. They had Marcus Smart and Al Horford playing at the foul line against the zone. They're not as good of decision-makers as Jokic is. So I think he's really going to expose that zone. I'm not saying it's not going to work, but he might average 15 assists in this series if they consistently play that 2-3 zone.
I would not be surprised if Jokic came out and averaged 35, 15, and 15 in this series. He's going to dominate. And if they play the zone, the Nuggets are going to win in 4 games if they play zone the whole time. The Nuggets are going to kill that zone.
But the thing is, Spoelstra's smart enough to know that.
Yeah,
I think he's smart enough.
They'll come up with some adjustment. Even if they come out of the zone, Spoelstra will make the adjustments. He's an unbelievable coach. Not discounting that at all in any stretch. But what I am going to talk about is Bam Adebayo has been skating by. He's been riding Jimmy Butler's coattail for quite some time now because he has not been very impressive in these playoffs. And everyone's talked about he's this defensive monster and everything. It's like, not really. And also offense. What does he give you? I mean, he's a good passer. He understands spacing pretty well, but like when he gets the ball in the post, you're not confident it's going in. I mean, Derek White was kind of bullying him last night.
Let me cook real quick, Carter. Get the TikTok camera on, because I was talking about this last night. For somebody that's praised as much as Bam Adebayo is, and yes, every team should want a Bam Adebayo on their team, but for somebody that's praised as much as he is, he gets almost no criticism. He gets almost no criticism for a guy that is regarded as the second best player on the team that's in the finals right now, and people hype him up like he's a superstar. He's a great player, great defender. He's not reliable on offense. They start him 30 feet from the basket. Maybe that's a scheming thing. I'm not entirely sure. They started 30 feet from the basket, and he was missing bunnies over Derek White. He just wasn't aggressive. I've never seen a center that gets praised as much as he is be less aggressive a lot of times, going after rebounds. I don't know, Carter. I just don't see it.
Is he DeAndre Ayton with better PR?
I don't think that's awful to say. I think Ayton's more polished off offensively and gives less of a crap on defense. Bam gives more effort, but as far as like actual production and results, I think it's comparable. I think Bam's got a better support system around him. Butler makes him look better than he is. I think he's a great player. Don't get me wrong.
I don't know about support system. I think Ayton's got a better support system than Bam.
But as far as like Katie and Booker cook on their own, and then everybody's like, oh, Ayton, blah blah blah. As far as like team gelling together,
that's fair. Well, Chris Paul, but like even when Chris Paul's healthy, like, you're not. When DeAndre Ayton comes up for that Chris Paul pick and roll, you're like, all right, like, cool. There's like a 30% chance they score here.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think Bam's going to get exposed this series, and I hope he doesn't. North Carolina guy, I like him as a person. I think he's a great player, but I think he gets praised entirely too much for the actual results that we see. You know, he does affect the game in a lot of ways that don't show up in the box score. He alters a lot of shots. He hustles after balls a lot. I'm not going to fault him for that. It's just being aggressive on offense. I don't know, Carter. It's supposed to be the second best guy on a finals team. I'm going to have to see a jump.
We're going to have to see one of these guys, the Duncan Robinsons, the Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martins. They've got to step up because we saw it in the last series. Like, I don't know why. Why do we deviate from what we know? We know Jokic is going to cook every big man in the league. Every year, all analytics people are like, Rudy Gobert, he's the best defender in basketball.
Yeah.
Jokic cooked him. Chef Boyardee'd him. Next round, who do they play? DeAndre Ayton. I mean, that wasn't going to be close. Nobody expected anything else other than Jokic to cook him. Then what happens? Who do they play in the Western Conference Finals? The best big man defender that everybody says averages almost 2.5 blocks in these playoffs, Anthony Davis, and he cooked him. Why is he not going to absolutely murder Bam Adebayo this series? That's why, like, it does scare me that if you go on Twitter, every single person is Nuggets are going to win. Nuggets are going to win in 4. Nuggets are going to win in 5. Take everything Nuggets, Jokic stats, all this. But like if you've watched these games, how can you disagree with that? But then the counterpoint to that is the Heat just keep winning. Like there's no explanation for the Heat winning these games.
I'm very curious to see how Spoelstra handles this because the Nuggets' bread and butter is that foul line extended top of the key handoff, dribble handoff with Murray and Jokic. And Gabe Vincent's pick and roll defense has been very good in the playoffs. He played very well against Boston. I wonder how they're going to handle that pick and roll handoff. And I also wonder if Spoelstra is going to – there's 2 approaches he can take. The first one is leave Bam on an island, play him one-on-one, and let him Jokic score 40 if he has to, and let him beat you. Don't let him beat you with his passing. I think he's going to go more of the other way and run double teams at Jokic, run him off the line, make life uncomfortable. And Jokic is going to make the right pass. He's going to make the right read. But I think Spoelstra is going to make those role guys prove to him that they can hit those shots. He's going to make KCP hit 4 threes. He's going to make Michael Porter Jr. make the one more pass decision or shoot a 3. He's going to make Aaron Gordon hit 3s from the corner off a wide open swing pass. And until they do that, I think he's going to make Jokic's life tough and run doubles at him, which I think you have to do. I think if you're Miami, you can't let Jokic beat you by scoring 40. You got to make the other guys make shots. And they did. They did against the Lakers, and that killed the Lakers. You got to see if it's sustainable for the finals. You got to see if those role guys are still going to play to the level they did.
One thing about the Nuggets, this is just a game one part of it. I know we're kind of like flip-flopping all over the place. The game one part of it, there's going to be some rust going into that game. I mean, they've had like over a week off, ton of time off. I think that's kind of advantageous for the Heat, but at the same time, like they came off a pretty grueling series, Game 7 on the road. Then they got to fly from Boston to Denver, and they got to play in altitude after playing a grueling series. If you're doing it from a betting perspective, I don't hate the under, but Heat first half spread. Heat are going to come out, and then the altitude's going to catch up. The Nuggets come back, and then, bam, they kill them.
I like that. If there was like a Heat to win the first half, Nuggets to win the game, don't know what that line is. Yeah, that would be nice. It's going to be tough, Carter, because the Nuggets are going to be a little rusty, and that's why I think Spoelstra's going to be running guys at Jokic and making other guys hit shots off his passes. He's going to make the right read, but we're going to see if KCP, Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter are going to hit these shots.
And that's an excellent point. Those guys are going to win them the finals. The MPJ, the Michael Porter Jr.'s, the KCPs, the Jamal Murray hitting threes, Aaron Gordon making the right cuts, getting dunked, and he's got to hit at least 1 to 2 threes a game. And I don't know, a lot of people are a little too high on the Nuggets. I am too, but I'm not going to get fooled by this Heat team. I mean, they fooled us 3-4. We didn't even think. We thought they might lose in the play-in to the Bulls.
I did. After the Atlanta game, I was like, "Oh, this Heat team's done. They're giving up. And they're ready to go to Cancun."
Blow it up.
Yep. Oh yeah, we were in blow it up mode. We were getting the TNT out and everything. It's hard for me to pick against them, Carter, but I'm not going to overthink it. I think the Nuggets are a well-oiled machine. Jokic is by far the best player in this series, by far the most consistent. Jamal Murray has been on a tear. The role guys have been hitting shots. Bruce Brown has been dynamite off the bench. I don't see a scenario in which this Heat team wins. And you know what? I said that against the Bucks too, and I said it against the Celtics before the series. And guess what? Here we are. So who knows anymore? Who knows?
Who knows exactly? But we have to put out a TikTok, a quick little TikTok for everyone to get pissed about. Give me your finals prediction.
My finals prediction, Carter, for this 2023 NBA Finals, I think the Heat are out of gas. They've been proving people wrong all playoffs, the whole playoff run. They've been proving people wrong, me included. I'll give them their credit. Credit is due. I think the Nuggets win in 5. I think they're a superior team. I think they have the talent. They have the best player in the league, arguably. Jamal Murray's arguably pushing to be the second best player in the series. We've seen Jimmy Butler be very inconsistent for stretches. Now I think he'll show up in the finals. But Jamal Murray and Jokic is a tough combo. Denver's role guys have been stepping up. I think top to bottom, they're a better team. And I think they're going to wear this Heat team down. I think they're going to win in 5.
I have Nuggets in 5 too. I think the Nuggets are going to roll. I think Butler and them, one of them has just a ridiculous game. A Butler 45-point game that is. Can the Heat come back from down 2-1 or whatever? Game 3, he has that miraculous game. Yeah. I think Nuggets win in 5. I think they lift the trophy in Denver, Game 5. I just don't know what answer they have for Nikola Jokic. No team has had it so far. I don't. And let's kind of go back to the previewing the series a little bit. What big men have the Heat gone against? Robert Williams, Al Horford, Julius Randle, Mitchell Robinson, Giannis, Brook Lopez. I mean, this is a totally different animal.
Yeah, they went against Giannis, who was hurt a lot of the series. Brook Lopez, who great defensive player. He's not an elite big man. And then, Mitchell Robinson, Julius Randle was off that whole series. And then Horford and Robert Williams, I mean, even against Tatum and Brown, they made their lives tough on the wing. None of them are at the caliber Jokic is playing at right now. I think the Nuggets are just a well-oiled machine, Carter. And eventually, I really do think that, the Heat's magic has to run out. The bottom, top to bottom level talent has to rise to the top. And in a final series like this, I know it's the Nuggets' first finals appearance. I get that. I don't think it's going to matter, Carter, the way they're playing. I really don't.
I don't think it matters either. And the last thing I'll touch on in this series, Caleb Martin is not going to do this in the finals. I will say that right here. I know people are going to be like, how can you say that? He just did this in the Eastern Conference Finals in Boston. No. Caleb Martin, it has to run out at some time.
There will be at least one, probably 2 games where Caleb Martin shoots 3 for 17.
Yes.
I guarantee.
He's going to talk himself. Caleb Martin walks on the court and thinks, I am the best player on this court. That is either a great thing or it's the worst thing that can happen to your team. You know who else does that? Marcus Smart.
I will say, if Tyler Hero does come back for Game 3, like he's reported to, that's going to take some of the offensive pressure off Caleb Martin. So maybe he won't, he won't have to be the second guy.
That's also another wrinkle into this is like, how does the chemistry work when he comes back? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I'm excited. I'm very excited. Game 1, Thursday night, ABC. So excited in Denver. I think the Nuggets are going to steamroll them. Give me Nuggets in 5, final prediction. And you have Nuggets in 5 as well, correct?
I have Nuggets in 5.
All right. Let's. Last thing I wanted to talk about. Nick Nurse, head coach of the 76ers. Did not expect that, I'll be honest. I thought he was, honestly, if you're Boston, are you kind of pissed you didn't just lose after Game 4 and you could have had Nick Nurse? I think Nick Nurse would have been the Celtics head coach if they lose Game 4 and they had time to woo him, because otherwise, like, Missoula's gone.
Well, there must have been some rumblings maybe when they came back from down 3-0 that, like, oh, Missoula might have just saved his job. It's not a sure thing he's going to get fired. So then Nick Nurse was like, okay, let me just do this. I think it's a home run hire. I think Nick Nurse is a great coach. He was great in Toronto. And I think the Sixers needed a different voice in the locker room, and especially with a guy that has proven playoff success. They had that crazy 2019 run where they won the title. He's been a pretty consistent, solid coach. I'm curious to see how he'll mesh if Harden ends up coming back and that whole group. But I think for like a guy like Tyrese Maxey, this is a great hire.
Yeah, I also think Harden's gone.
I think so, too. I think that's probably run its course, and that might be for the best.
I think the only way Harden was coming back was if Mike D'Antoni was the head coach or the Celtics paid him a gazillion dollars. He's going to Houston. The Suns are still without a coach. The Bucks hired Dantley from the Raptors, if I remember correctly. And the Celtics, they're going to have a head coach spot open. It's going to be interesting. I don't know. If I'm Nick Nurse, I'm kind of wondering why the Sixers. But I guess Morey sold him, or he got a lot of money.
I think both those things are true, and it's also going to be a big culture change from Toronto, where he was running guys out there. He was playing like balls to the wall, press defense, 45 minutes a game for your starters. Now he's going to have to manage Joel Embiid, he's going to have to be load managed next year because he can't break down like he did this year in the playoffs. He won his MVP. He's going to have to load manage a little bit. I know you think Harden's not going to be there, but let's just say he is. Harden's not going to go balls to the wall for 82 games. It's a much different dynamic. He can't play these starters 45 minutes. Tyrese Maxey can handle it, sure, but the other 4 guys, Harris, PJ Tucker, you can't play those guys 45 minutes like you could with Siakam and Scotty Barnes.
I think that's very true. Anything else in the NBA at all before we wrap up?
There's going to be a lot of people that say that this finals isn't the best outcome, and I don't think there is a best outcome. I'm grateful to see the best 2 teams in the league. Maybe not the best 2 teams in the league, but the teams that made it to the finals, like they're the last 2 standing. No matter who it is, it's a testament to how good they've been during the playoff run. And I think that's fair. Everybody clamoring for Lakers and Celtics. Yeah, it would have been cool. Battle for 18, and the ratings would have spiked. Sure, that's fine. But from a basketball perspective, I think this is going to be an entertaining series. Even though I think it's going to be Nuggets in 5, I don't think it's going to be boring, though.
Oh, last thing. I forgot to ask this. This is probably going on the TikTok. So,
okay,
if the Heat win this series, is this the greatest upset in NBA Finals history?
I think it has to be. I really think it has to be. For a team that nobody even thought would make it out of the play-in tournament, a team with a negative point differential, to beat a 2-time MVP, arguably best player in the league, the 1 seed in the West, overall number 1 seed, I think this has to be the greatest finals upset if the Heat pull it off. Just the run they've been on with the roster they have.
I think it is too. The only other one I can think of was maybe Pistons against the Lakers. But if you look at the sportsbooks odds, it's pretty similar right there. I would say Pistons Lakers in the mid-2000s, maybe Mavs over the Heat in 11. I know this is recency bias. I'm not looking in the 80s and 70s and 60s series as much because I just think Boston won every year in the 60s except for 1.
I was thinking 2011 Mavs over Heat just because the big names, Miami Big 3. But if you look at that Mavs team, what were they, 57-25? Like, they weren't a bum team during the regular season like the Heat were.
No. It still surprises you, though. And also, like, how they shut down LeBron. Anyhow, we don't have to get into that. But I also believe this would be the greatest upset in NBA Finals history. People will want to say the 2016 Cavs. The 2016 Cavs team was legit, too. I mean, they had prime LeBron, Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving was on his game. They had other dudes stepping up. That's bullcrap if you try and pull that card because they only had Curry, Draymond, and Clay. Yes, they went 73-9, but does not make that the greatest upset ever.
I completely agree, and I think it's one of the greatest comebacks ever to be down 3-1 in the finals. That's a different story, but as far as upsets go, just from a series perspective, no, you can't argue that. You can't argue that at all.
All right, well, great show. The laptop lasted. We finished at 8%. We started at 35. We're down to 8%. We made it. We barely made it. We had one hiccup in the middle, but
we're here.
Hey, great show. Great show. We're here. NBA Finals is Thursday. We'll be here all the NBA Finals. We'll do an NBA draft show with Adam Stanko here in a couple weeks, which is crazy that's here. Like the NBA
I know.
And we get to talk Hornets. We finally get to talk Hornets for once, and it's not forced, and it's not where I have to like start a timer and then stop it because we talk too much Hornets. I'm so excited. We get to talk about Scoop versus Brandon Miller. We get to talk all these different guys in the draft. We'll get into that later. Let's watch the finals now. I'm so excited. We're gonna have football coming soon. Football's back. I mean, I was texting you today. I've already placed a bunch of college football futures. If you want them right now, Kansas plus 4,000 to win the Big 12. Duke plus 3,700. That's not a homer pick. I know I'm wearing a Duke shirt. I could not give a single F about Duke football. Let's be honest. I am the most convenient Duke fan there is. It's only convenient when they beat Carolina. That's all I care about. I will never go out of my way to watch Duke versus North Carolina A&T. I just won't.
No, I can't blame you at all. Duke football's been a laughingstock for the last however many years. They actually, Mike Elko bringing it back.
They had a good stretch. They had a good stretch with Cutcliffe.
Yeah, Daniel Jones, Jameson Crowder. They had some guys, I guess.
Yeah, Sean Renfree.
Okay, all right.
We got some guys. We've got guys. Anyhow, that'll do it from us. Make sure to subscribe. Subscribe, rate, review. Do what you can to help out. Check out the YouTube if you're not watching already on there. Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, wherever you're listening. Subscribe. Thank you for listening once again. Check out CarterCast.com. The blogs are coming back tomorrow. I'm going to have tennis picks. I'm going to put my women's tennis picks on there tomorrow.
Oh, man. I might have to deposit a little bit in the FanDuel account and tail some picks, Carter. I don't know.
Or call the hotline.
Or, yeah, JG Whitworth.
Yeah, call it. Yeah, 1-800-CASH now. Anyhow, all right, that'll do it from us. Thank you for listening. We'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye.